that is really useful and super practical.
I always kind of have this whole conversation with patients about how to choose supplements. And it doesn't matter which brand you choose, just make sure it's a good quality one,
Mhm.
right? It's super easy to ask. It is doing that extra step, but especially for fertility patients who are on so many things, like you just want to make sure that you're on a good one. And then as a sidebar rant on top of that, it's you want to make sure that where you're purchasing them from is actually legit, right? We've come across accidentally counterfeit products that you can purchase online. At that point, how do you know?
Hi, superhumans. I'm Dr. Mavis Garcia.
And I'm Dr. Wise.
We're two of the physician leaders at Marken Fertility Center, otherwise known as Our Baby, MFC.
As fertility specialists, we've witnessed firsthand the challenges, triumphs, and the myriad of emotions that come with trying to conceive. Whether you're just starting to think about having a baby, actively trying, or facing challenges along the way, My Fertility Podcast will be your go-to resource for honest conversations and a supportive community.
So grab a cup of coffee or tea and settle in, and let's demystify the world of fertility together.
On today's episode of My Fertility Podcast, we are joined by Dr. Moira Kwok, a naturopathic doctor who has a very special interest in supporting couples throughout their fertility journeys. She struggled with her own fertility journey for 5 long years, which is how she and I had the opportunity to connect. But her journey resulted in her sweet little boy, and this experience skyrocketed her passion in helping other couples navigate the world of infertility. If you are interested in hearing more from Dr. Kwok or getting to meet her in person, you can check out her Instagram. It's Dr. Moira, Moira Kwok, Kwoknd. And as well, her website is www.moirakwoknd.com. That's MoiraKwoknd.com.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kwok, for being here.
Thank you for having me.
The first question I have for you is tell me what you do and why you do what you do.
I'm a naturopathic doctor. I graduated in '07 and started practicing in the Toronto area. And currently I practice in Toronto and the Burlington area. And the reason I do what I do and the reason I focus on fertility and women's health is because I had gone through my own struggles with endometriosis since I was very young. And then subsequently fertility struggles where I ended up having to do a bunch of fertility treatments. And back way before when I was first at CCNM, which is one of the two accredited colleges for naturopathic medicine in Canada, in my intern year, I fell in love with women's health and fertility, but didn't really focus on it 100% until a few years later when I started going through my own struggles. So that's how I landed doing what I do and focusing specifically on fertility.
Yeah, so you have a personal connection to your work, which is wonderful.
It definitely helps the patient side of it, where I understand things from a patient point of view and all the struggles that you go through on a day to day, as opposed to just in a medical appointment.
Those of us who really don't have much knowledge on the topic, what is naturopathic medicine? And I guess what is it not as well? Is it fair to say that it's kind of different from conventional traditional medicine? How does it all kind of come together?
Yeah. So, naturopathic medicine, there's all sorts of different, I guess, ways and definitions you can have on it. The way I explain the way I practice naturopathic medicine to my patients is I look at the patient like a puzzle and I'm trying to put together all the different puzzle pieces that make up who they are from a health perspective and try to support them to get to their end goal with evidence based nutrition, lifestyle supplements, and sometimes acupuncture recommendations. What it isn't is I work very well in teams. I worked many, many years in a integrative clinic in downtown Toronto where I work side by side with family docs and physios and chiros and acupuncturists and all the things. And we work very well to support our patient together from I guess, a team perspective. I would never be the type of practitioner who would say, don't see so and so because it doesn't work, just see me. I don't think that many of us, if any of us in naturopathic medicine, say that very much, if at all. It isn't something where this sounds terrible when I say it, it's not like about crystals and all the things. There's a lot of research there to back it. And there is a very big difference in the online space for naturopathic medicine because there's some of us who are regulated and licensed, and then there's others that aren't. And it's very confusing because depending on in Canada, which province you practice in, there's either a lot of rules or there's no rules at all. And there are certain provinces in Canada where literally you could take an online course for the weekend and hang a shingle and say that you're a naturopathic doctor, versus in other provinces where it's very strictly regulated. You can only call yourself a naturopathic doctor if you had gone to certain schools within North America. You had completed a whole bunch of North American board exams and in order to call yourself a naturopathic doctor. So it also depends on who you kind of come across online.
That's a great point. So for patients who are looking for naturopathy doctor, what kind of things when they go to their website or listen to their social media, what are some of the red flags or what are some of the green flags? Things that would tell you, yeah, this is somebody who actually follows evidence-based medicine.
I'm just going to speak to Ontario because that's where I practice and what I know. In Ontario, in order to call yourself a naturopathic medicine, you have to be registered with the College of Naturopaths of Ontario. So the easiest thing is to literally go on to Kono's website and see if we have a license number under them. And if we do, that means we are, I guess, official or legit in Ontario. On websites, because we're in Ontario, we also are very regulated on what we can say on our websites and what we can't. I don't remember the whole list of it, but some of the things that you're not allowed to say on the website is, I can guarantee you this, right? I can guarantee that I can help you take home a baby in fertility. I don't know that anyone would say that, but they're not allowed to make specific guarantees. They're not allowed to sell things in bulk. They're not allowed to say, oh, this brand is really great and this is the brand that you should be buying. There's certain things that we're not allowed to say. So that would definitely be a key red flag that if you knew what you were looking for, would be pretty easy to pick out, but not everyone knows that.
That's good to know. I certainly didn't know that. So thank you.
That is really interesting. Actually, I did not know that it was such a closely regulated thing in Ontario. I can speak to the fact that naturopaths and naturopathy students definitely do study a lot and they do learn a lot. When I was in med school, actually, I was living in an apartment for the summer vacation, and it was myself, another one of my friends who was another med student. We were living with two naturopathy students.
Nice.
Yeah, it was super fun. It was super cool because, we're studying a lot of the same things from different perspectives. And you're right, it's not just like that stereotypical image of like the crystals or whatever I think you referenced.
Well, yeah, I don't know what else to
Gives
say.
gives you a little bit of the cringe. Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
But that there's a lot to it and there's a lot of substance that
Mhm.
goes with it as well. And so, that was definitely a very eye-opening summer for me, actually. Yeah.
The other thing I forgot to mention on websites is a big one is testimonials. We're not allowed to have any of those. So that's like one thing that you do see very quickly when naturopathic doctors, if they're not, I guess, real naturopathic doctors in Ontario, they'll put up testimonials on their website. And that's 100% like a big no-no in the regulated side of things, which is why you don't see it on most of our websites.
Yeah, that's great to know. That's good to know. At what point in someone's fertility journey did you think would be appropriate to reach out to use your words, legit, very well regulated naturopathic doctor?
There's like the perfect world scenario, and then there's what actually happens. So in my practice, what actually happens is I kind of see patients all at any point in their journey. The examples are, or I guess the spectrum of patients that show up on my doorstep is they are a few years out from trying and they've had people in their lives, whether it's siblings or friends or whoever, that have struggled and they come in and they're like, hey, I just want to know, do I have anything that I need to worry about? Or I have this in my family. Can we just kind of get a handle on it now? And that's always in the perfect case scenario, probably the place that you would want to start because it's way before things get to the point where time is of the essence. So you have all the time in the world to support them and kind of regulate things and optimize things as much as you can. But in reality, what's probably happening is people are either coming in when they're struggling or coming in when they've already been at a clinic and struggled for quite some time or gone through multiple clinics or multiple rounds. And that's typically, you know, when they're just starting their fertility clinic journey or already in it is when we see a lot of patients. I will say though that over the years, because it's actually been quite some time since I've been in practice, now more and more, I think with social media being a big influence, because when I first started practicing, Facebook was like a thing that you were on when you had a university, like I'm very much aging myself, but back then there was no social media. And now I think more and more people in their 20s and teens probably even are realizing that there is all this potential for fertility struggles in their future. And they're taking a little bit more of the power back, I guess. And they're trying to figure it out earlier, which is really nice to see.
Let's say that someone is maybe been trying to conceive for a year, someone with ovaries and they have a partner with sperm, and maybe they're waiting to go to see a fertility clinic. Maybe they haven't gone yet. What would that initial visit with a naturopath, what would that look like?
In my practice, the way my appointments are scheduled in is the first and the second appointment are a little bit longer. They're quite long compared to the conventional side of things. They're about an hour long. And within the first, if not the first two, it just depends on how complicated the case is. Within the first couple of appointments, we'll have a full intake where first appointment's always talking about all things periods, all things fertility. And depending on how complicated that is, sometimes the rest of the conversation rolls into the next appointment. But if everything is relatively straightforward, then we also talk about all the other things that can come into play, right? Past medical history, medical concerns, family history. What is their lifestyle like? What's their nutrition like? And we kind of get a really good idea of what they bring to the table. And if they have, which sometimes they do, test results, blood work, ultrasound, anything that they have from their fertility clinic, we also then go through and discuss the results as well, which is really nice for the patient because oftentimes it's just hearing the same thing from their fertility doctor from another source that isn't sort of within the same clinic or in the same conventional side of things where they just want an alternative opinion that kind of lines up with the fertility clinic is really nice to hear for them to say, okay, yeah, I'm doing the right thing. And we talk about normal versus abnormal results, but then also optimal. And I also spend a lot of this time with patients who have already been at a fertility clinic answering questions that they didn't have necessarily the time to talk to their fertility docs about, or it just didn't come up in their brain because so much information was being processed during that appointment. And we then go through all of the things that it's like, okay, well, this is why they said what they said. This is why they're suggesting what they suggested, and just kind of troubleshooting all the things that pop up.
I think you've answered a lot of the next thing that I was going to ask you, but I'm going to ask it anyway because maybe you
Okay.
can elaborate a little bit more. But it is along the same things that you're talking about. Like, you see the test from the fertility specialist, and then you can sort of reiterate the same concerns the fertility specialist may have. So, my question was, how can naturopathic medicine complement conventional fertility treatment? For patients who are already going to a fertility clinic, I think some patients feel like they have to choose one or the other. I'm with my fertility doctor, things aren't working well. Now I'm going to cheat on them or leave them or go behind their back to go and see this other naturopathic doctor, and I have to keep it a secret. And so, can you talk about how the two specialties can work together and where this idea that patients have to choose or that the two things are opposites and not complementary comes from? It's a big
Yeah.
question.
A big question. Yes.
There's
I
like three
think,
questions within one question. That's just me.
yeah, yeah, that's
The way my
okay. It's
brain
all
works.
it's all good. I think that more and more, I have less and less patients feeling like they have to pick a side,
Oh, good. Mhm.
which is really nice to hear. I don't know if that's just the type of patients I'm attracting into my practice because of the way I practice, but I find that most of my patients, vast majority of my patients, are working probably with both and not really having, I guess, a problem with it and feeling like they have to hide that, which is really nice. And that's partly probably because from just the different types of fertility clinics out there and the different types of fertility docs out there, I think all of us are just trying to get to the same end goal. And patients are going to come in taking a laundry list of supplements often, anyways. So we might as well be open about it so that we know clearly what they're taking. And where naturopathic medicine steps in a little bit is to be able to, what I was saying before, be able to answer a lot of the questions that come up after their appointments that there isn't any time to kind of address. And their brain is just not there in the moment because it's just basically trying to get all the information and process it. And they just haven't had time to figure out questions yet. But also, I spend a lot of time talking to my patients who come in with the bags of supplements to say, you know what? First of all, not everybody needs to be taking every single fertility supplement under the sun. That's not going to work. Second of all, there are specific supplements that should be taken with IVF or whatever protocols. And then there are certain ones that 100% should not be taken together, right? Just because they're natural, just because they're supplements doesn't mean that there aren't side effects. It doesn't mean that there aren't interactions. So that's really important for us, I feel like, as naturopathic doctors, to be able to know the differences between all of them. And then also, as a complete like sidebar rant that I always go on to with patients is you need to know what you're taking and you need to make sure that what you're taking is good for you and also what you're taking is actually high quality and be confident in what you're taking doing what it's supposed to be doing for you.
By the way, I love a good sidebar rant. I am the resident ranter of my fertility podcast.
Got it.
This is my venue for getting on my soapbox, so please join me.
Okay, yeah,
Um,
no problem.
but I think you hit on a really, really good point, right? As much as social media is great for giving patients a sense of community and a sense of connection and for allowing people to build those connections and to not feel alone, on the flip side, just because so and so took this supplement doesn't necessarily mean that you should or that it would be good, and that there's that risk of harm, right? That's always there. And so it's a very good point that it's not everything works for everyone, and that it's important to really take that personalized, individualized approach and to be forthcoming about different supplements that you're starting and stopping as well. Because I'm pretty sure patients sometimes don't tell me and they forget or whatever, but it can be for sure very relevant.
Yeah, I always tell patients, the supplements that you take, if you're taking too many, you, first of all, way too overwhelmed. It's like a meal, right? Like for
Mhm.
all the pills that you have to take at each whatever sitting throughout the day. And then also, it gets really expensive. And this fertility journey already is so expensive. Why are you wasting money on all of these other things when these few would probably be what you need? And then the most important thing is you don't know what worked at the end of the day. So I had a patient years ago who came in and she literally brought in like a shopping bag, like a big shopping bag of supplements. And I just thought she just brought everything, like that she had doubles and triples and she was like a salesperson. But she ended up bringing in every single bottle was different. And I just couldn't get over how many things she was on. And I spent a good portion of that appointment kind of talking her through and being like, this is what this does, but you don't have this. This is what this does. You shouldn't be on this. You don't need this. It was a lot of convincing to talk to her and be like, "No, you really just don't need these." And then, by the way, some of these products are not great quality. They haven't been third party tested. They haven't been all these things. You just don't know what you're taking.
Can you walk us a bit through that actually? Because I think that you hit on a really good point with the quality of supplements and third party testing. What should consumers be looking out for?
So here's my like soapbox moment that I go on rants with every new patient that walks in through my door. So if anybody that I know that I've seen as a patient is listening to this, they're going to start laughing because they've heard this already. I always say I have a love-hate relationship with the supplement industry. I love it because obviously I'm a naturopathic doctor and I recommend them all the time. I absolutely hate it sometimes because from a consumer standpoint, so from our patient's standpoint, you walk into the supplement store or you open up the website of their shop or whatever, their online store, and you just see like, I always use vitamin D as an example, like the wall of vitamin D options out there, and you just don't know where to start. And so common sense tells you, well, why do I have to pay $50 for this bottle when I can pay $12 for this bottle? But there's certain questions that I always ask of my supplement companies, I guess. It's like a series of 5 questions. The first one is, first of all, do you actually need to take this? Is there research to show support that you should be taking product number XYZ? The second question is, okay, now that there is evidence to support the fact that I should be taking this, the form that's available in this product, the right form for me, is it actually absorbable? The third question is, okay, great. Now that I know I need to take it and it's the right form, how much of it is in this product? Do I have to take 10 capsules a day or can I just take one, right? Like, don't pick the product that gives you 10 caps a day. Take the one that gives you 1 cap a day. The fourth question, which I tell patients is probably the most important question, because if you don't remember any of it, it's probably the fourth question is what you want to ask is, you can actually contact companies and ask them for their third party report. So it's called their certificate of analysis or COA. And you just ask them, can I have your COA for whatever product you're looking at taking or that you already are taking? The best companies out there will give you their COA and they'll actually ask you, okay, yeah, sure, no problem. What's your lot number that you're looking at? Like on every bottle of your supplements, there's a lot number. So when they ask you for the lot number, you know that every batch that they produce, they've done a COA on. I don't expect that from every company because there's very big companies and there's very small companies. So if it's within their budget to at least do it once a quarter, that's what you want to have. And then the last question is just cost, right? Oh, and by the way, the COA, if you're super nerdy like me, and you can totally nerd out on the details of the COA, but the 2 sections of the COA that you want to really pay attention to is number one, it's a clean product. So the example I always give is, when you ask people how much seafood you eat week to week, day to day, everyone's like, oh, I eat fish, but I'm worried about the mercury content. And then they turn around and take a fish oil supplement, which is high dose, which could also have a bunch of mercury in it and have you guaranteed that there isn't any mercury in it. So that's one thing, is just making sure that there's no heavy metals or any of the other stuff. So it's a clean product. And then the second thing is making sure that what they claim is in the product to the extent that they say is in the product is actually in there, which is just mind blowing that I have to check, but I always have to just double check. And if they're going to release a COA, they're not going to give you a bad one, right? So as long as they give it to you, it can then be put into the list of quote unquote high quality products that you can then choose from based on price and availability. That's how I kind of assess supplements.
So does the COA, you mentioned mercury, does it test for all kinds of heavy metals or? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, mercury and lead are probably the most common because those are the things that kind of show up the most, but they do test for other things as well. It's like a whole, I think they also test for pesticides. They test for a bunch of stuff.
Okay, good, good. Good, that's great. I didn't know that
Yeah.
you could ask for a COA.
Yeah, you can
Yeah.
ask them all. Whether they give you the COA is the other side. So way back in the day, I've been asking for these for a long time. It used to just be, yeah, here it is, or no, or we don't have it, or we just have no idea what you're talking about, or they just ignore you. And now there's a third answer that kind of comes in and it's, yeah, we have it. Trust us. It's great. The COA is perfect. But for proprietary reasons, we won't release it to you. And then I always tell my patients, I'm like, you know what? If it's a vitamin D, none of these products should have a proprietary scenario attached to it because you can't patent vitamin C, vitamin D, CoQ10. Like you can't patent any of these things. So what is it that you've potentially stuck in your product that isn't very clear on your label that potentially makes your product better than others? I'm not super comfortable with that answer either.
Yeah. And can you talk about this whole NSF label?
Mhm.
That's the one that if you have the label, supposedly it's a good product. Can you comment on that? Is that right?
I will always still reach out to the companies and ask for the COAs, but usually the ones who are, labeled properly, they will release the COAs. But I just want that as a like confirmation because anyone can put anything on their website, realistically speaking, I would imagine.
It's really scary.
Yeah, I always tell patients, I'm like, if I were to start a supplement company tomorrow, and obviously I'm not in marketing for a reason, my marketing strategy would be on my website. It's like, here's the CRAs, like, here's the updated CRAs for all of my products. Just download it because that should be the case, right? And this is why I'm not in marketing, but that's how it should be. It should be easily available, and it's not always.
That's so interesting. I mean, it really goes to show you it's like buyer beware because supplements are such a massive, massive industry and they are really popular nowadays, not just in
Mhm.
fertility, but outside of fertility as well. We hear so much about them being like unregulated and that, I've heard people throw around this idea of like, oh, third party testing. But to be honest, I never actually knew what that meant or how to actually go about checking of these things. So I love those 5 questions. That is really useful and super practical.
Yeah, it's super easy to ask. It is doing that extra step, but especially for fertility patients who are on so many things, like you just want to make sure that you're on a good one. And then as a sidebar rant on top of that, it's you want to make sure that where you're purchasing them from is actually legit, right? We've come across accidentally counterfeit products that you can purchase online. At that point, how do you know? Right. So I always kind of have this whole conversation with patients about how to choose supplements. We're talking like just from a brand perspective. And I don't have any affiliation with any company. So to me, it doesn't matter. I always say to them, it doesn't matter which brand you choose, just make sure it's a good quality one.
Mhm.
Right.
So you mentioned that rightly so, it's not like every patient needs to be on all the supplements out there, but are there some supplements that you would recommend for, let's say, the majority of patients? Let's say people that are producing eggs and planning to use eggs to conceive a pregnancy and carry a pregnancy in their own uterus, for example. Or let's say people who produce sperm and are trying to use their own sperm to conceive a pregnancy. Are there any dietary changes or supplements that would support fertility goals for those scenarios?
Yeah, so from a nutrition standpoint, I'm always very hyper aware of what's realistic and then what's like
Hmm.
textbook perfect scenario. So I stick to very loose nutritional guidelines in that I just want to make sure patients are fueling their bodies properly. They're not on a massive caloric restriction. Like that's always never a great thing. I want to make sure they're eating enough protein for them. So that's different depending on what you bring to the table, your exercise levels, your activity. There's a lot of factors that kind of come into play. I want to make sure that they're eating nutritious foods from as whole foods as possible with the full understanding that, like, I don't know, my birthday was just a few days ago. So cupcakes, we had cupcakes for my birthday, right? Like, you want to make sure that you enjoy life because with the fertility journey, you restrict yourself for so long with an unknown end marker of where that will be. So I want patients to enjoy life, but also understand that nutritious foods should be the 80-20 rule, right? Like 80% of the time
We
you want to
love
be
the
eating. You're
80-20
like,
rule in this
yeah,
My Fertility podcast.
yeah.
We say it semi-regularly, 80-20.
Mhm,
Yeah.
right? Like enjoy life, go out and eat whatever it is you want, but don't do that every single day, every single time you eat, right? And then the general gist of nutritional guidelines is just the Mediterranean based diet, right? That's like
Yes.
we know that in everything, like almost everything that it's tested for. It's like, oh yeah, it's really good to stick to a Mediterranean-based diet. But the Mediterranean-based diet is just lots of fiber, fruits, veg, legumes, right? Lots of high quality fats, lots of healthy lean proteins, meats, minimal simple sugars. If you ask anybody, they can kind of tell you that without those specific words, what's a healthy diet. But those are in general what I talk to patients about. And then every condition, every scenario, it brings different layers to the nutritional guidelines. So it just depends, but that's like the gist of it. And then general rule of thumb when it comes to supplements is a prenatal, is pretty much everybody. They should be on. You want to top up nutrients that are deficient, and that kind of goes for a whole bunch of them that are probably very common in the fertility world. You want to take supplements that will enhance or complement at least all the nutrition stuff that you're bringing into your diet. And then you don't want to go overboard on too many things. And then again, it's individualized, right? So not every patient goes home with exactly the same protocol. It's just what does the patient bring to the table? And then we adjust the supplements based on that and then what the evidence is showing. And if evidence changes, because it's medicine and it changes all the time, then we change with it. And then as Canadians, you're probably going to have to take a vitamin D.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a pretty safe bet. I mean, I think
Yeah.
basically everyone's deficient in vitamin D unless you're taking a supplement in this country.
Pretty much. Yeah. We test a lot of our patients on their vitamin D levels, and pretty much everybody is deficient. Yes.
If somebody is not on a supplement, I don't even test them. I'm like, I would bet money that you're deficient.
I
Let's
know.
get you on the vitamin D, then we can talk about testing.
For sure.
I will
Yeah.
save you some money because, again, it's not covered under OHIP to do vitamin D level testing.
Yeah. I just like to test in order to figure out how much they should be taking. Right. Like if you come in with vitamin D, so in all of my like 17 years of practice, the lowest vitamin D levels I came in was 23. And
Whoa.
keeping in mind normal 75 to 250. And so if you came in with a 23 versus 72, that's a big difference in what you need to be supplementing with when we have such tight deadlines, let's call it, when it comes to fertility. So that's the reason I like to test in a lot of my patients with the full understanding, yeah, it's not covered by OHIP because essentially, I guess, the government's looking at it like you guys are all deficient anyways, just supplement and we'll save the money.
I'm just going to add a shameless plug here for episode 10 of my fertility podcast, because we talked there about prenatal vitamins and how to tell what's a good prenatal vitamin or not. So you can go back and listen to that episode.
So we've talked a lot about supplements. We've talked a bit about diet. What other elements do you talk about with patients in your practice? So what other kind of things do you cover?
Everyone who's struggling with fertility or battling with it, there's going to be a lot of stress. So we talk about the impact that that can have, but then also at the same time, understanding that that's not the one thing that's causing the problem. So I find that we often have to walk the fine line between what's perfect and what all the influencers and stuff out there will say that you have to do all these things versus what's realistic. Because at the end of the day, the perfect treatment plan is not going to be perfect if the patient can't do it. Right. So we talk about stress. We talk about exercise and lifestyle. It's just movement. It doesn't have to be you going to the gym and doing whatever every single day. It's just we talk about what's ideal. We talk about sleep. We talk about what they're putting in their body, nutrition. We talk about digestion. We talk about all sorts of other things all at the same time. Yeah, because it all kind of goes hand in hand and it all works together to improve. And also the great thing about naturopathic medicine and fertility is I have the ability, and I don't even know the word, it's the privilege of being able to see these patients through their pregnancy and postpartum. It's one of my favorite things. I absolutely love it when there's successes, but at the other side, I get to see the other side of it when I get to meet these babies, and all of these things from a nutrition and lifestyle standpoint come into play when it comes to pregnancy too. Right? Because yes, the end goal is to get them pregnant, but it's also to have a really great pregnancy, as great as possible with pregnancy being the way it is. It's always a little bit fun. But getting them through pregnancy, postpartum, and all that is really important as well. So it's not just fertility related, it's also overall health.
Patients were listening to this thinking, oh my goodness, thank you. I need to connect with Dr. Kwok and she sounds amazing and I definitely want to see her. How can patients connect with you or your clinic? And what are the waiting times? What are the costs to see a naturopathic doctor and being put on a treatment plan?
You can find me on my website, also on social media. I'm typically on Instagram or LinkedIn. I have other ones as well, but those are probably the two places that I hang out a little bit more in. They can always reach out to me through email. Everything, contact information's on the website, or they can contact me through social media, but the best is to go through email. The wait times, it depends. Usually it's a few weeks. Sometimes if there's cancellations, then we might be able to get you in a little bit sooner than that. Sometimes if things are a little bit crazy, then it might be like a little bit later than that. But usually just contact us and then we'll be able to figure it out. And I'm sorry, I forgot your last question. What was the other?
The cost of a
Oh,
consultation.
She likes to ask lots of little questions.
it's okay.
Don't worry,
And
I get
then,
lost in them sometimes too.
okay.
When she does it to me.
Thanks for the love, Dr. Wise. Thanks. You were my best friend.
So the cost of the visits, it's by the hour essentially. So it's 250 or 280 for the hour. And then, like I said, usually it's 1 hour for the first. Typically, it's an hour for the second. And then it's anywhere between 15 to 60, but usually like 30 or 45 minutes for subsequent visit.
I really hope that everybody listening to this conversation, listening to this podcast episode, can appreciate the fact that it's not medical doctor versus naturopath.
100%.
I mean, Dr. Kwok and Dr. Garcia have even color coordinated their outfits. Like if they,
It wasn't planned. It just happened.
Without knowing.
I did not get the memo, but joking aside, like it's not one or the other. It's not us versus them. All of us want to do the best thing for the patient. I always tell people the number one goal, healthy mom, healthy baby, right? And I think that that's really where we are all in alignment and we can work together to get there. And we come with our own different sets of skills and our own different sets of slightly different knowledge bases and experiences. And so I really hope that anybody listening to this episode can appreciate the fact that if you are seeing naturopath, it's okay. You can tell me. I'm not going to be upset because I do think some patients wonder about that. And that I think that seeing a naturopath is a great thing, as long as, of course, they are somebody that is regulated in the profession. And of course, I'm partial. I do love Dr. Kwok. I'm a little biased. There is a lot to be said for that, to sort of have that hand-in-hand relationship. And in my mind, it really is synergistic in the sense that we bring slightly different things to the table, but together we can really help patients a lot. What are your kind of concluding thoughts, final thoughts? What's the message that you'd like to leave our audience with?
The message that I always discuss with patients, probably within the first appointment or two, is I always kind of tear up whenever I say this. The one thing that I always hope for every single one of my fertility patients is that whenever they get to the end of their fertility journey, wherever that takes them, however that ends, with a baby, with muscle babies, without a baby, wherever they are, they're able to kind of look back at everything that they did leading up to that point and be able to say to themselves, yep, I did everything I could. And be able to close that door on that chapter and then be able to move forward with the next amazing whatever chapter, whatever it'll bring. That's what I want to do. And I hope that all of the patients that we all work with, all of us in the fertility world, are able to say that to themselves, because it would be so hard to get to that and say, what if? What if I'd only done this? What if I did that? I should have done this. And I don't even know how I would be able to move forward without that. I know that I looked at everything that I did and all the craziness that happened with my fertility journey and having done IVF and all this stuff, and I have my kid. I don't regret anything that I did. I would have done it the same, no matter what. All the good and all the bad that came with it, I would have done it all over again. So I just want that. I want people to be able to say that to themselves at the end of the day.
I love it. That's perfect. I'm not usually speechless, but I am speechless now. I think that's perfect and beautiful and totally aligns with the way that we practice at Markham Fertility Center. And I always say I can't promise a baby, but I can promise experience. I can promise, for me, it's doing everything that you can and also knowing that you are in the center of your journey, that your uniqueness, your feelings, your thoughts, who you are as a person, as a human, we're always centered to your care, because everybody's different. Every fertility case is different and unique and special. And we really like to meet our patients where they are.
You guys do an amazing job.
Oh, I love it. It's been such a pleasure chatting with you.
I know it's been lovely speaking to you guys too.
And that's a wrap for today, superhumans.
If you're looking to connect, get social with us. Follow us on YouTube and Instagram at My Fertility Podcast or visit us online at myconfertility.com. And don't forget, follow, subscribe, and share your favorite episode.
Thanks for listening to My Fertility Podcast and for being a vital part of our community. We know you've got this.
We're signing off until next Tuesday.
If you found this episode of My Fertility Podcast helpful, please take a moment to head over to the review section and leave us your thoughts. Your reviews and comments are incredibly valuable to us and help guide future episodes. We also welcome you to direct your questions to info@myfertilitypodcast.com.
My Fertility Podcast is produced by Rabbit Media Inc. in conjunction with Dr. Garcia and Dr. Weiss. Music from Mix Kit Raising Me Higher by Ajay Stelino. My Fertility Podcast is not intended to replace any type or variation thereof professional medical, health, or legal advice, nor should the content be taken as medical advice. Please contact your primary healthcare professional regarding any medical questions you may have. The information presented in this podcast is based on the knowledge and understanding of the host at the time of recording. Medical knowledge is constantly evolving, and new research may change the understanding of health-related topics. While we strive to provide accurate and up-to-date information, we do not guarantee the completeness, accuracy, or timeliness of the content. The views expressed in this podcast by guests are not those of the host or the management. This podcast is not intended to impose any type of discrimination. My Fertility Podcast and its management are not responsible for any losses, damages, or liabilities that may arise from the use of this podcast.